The new rule announced by the Department of Health and Human Services under Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has sent shockwaves through both the medical research community and the pharmaceutical industry. The mandate, which requires placebo-controlled trials for all new vaccines before approval, is being presented as a move toward increased transparency and safety. However, beneath the surface, there are serious implications that suggest this policy may not only be scientifically misguided but also ethically fraught, financially burdensome, and dangerously disruptive to public health. On its face, the idea of requiring placebo-controlled testing for vaccines may seem like a prudent attempt to increase scientific rigor. But the reality is far more complex and potentially dangerous. Vaccine experts have raised the alarm that this sweeping regulation fails to distinguish between genuinely new vaccine developments and routine updates to existing, well-studied formulas. The seasonal flu vaccine, for instance, is updated annually based on viral strain predictions and has been used safely for decades. Subjecting each version of this vaccine to a full placebo-controlled trial would not only be logistically impossible, but also counterproductive. By the time testing concludes, the relevant viral season would be over, and the vaccine rendered largely useless. More disturbingly, this policy could delay the availability of life-saving vaccines during outbreaks or emergencies. It risks creating unnecessary hurdles to the approval of modified vaccines, including those needed for rapidly mutating viruses like influenza or new variants of SARS-CoV-2. In the name of increased testing, we may be denying the public timely access to protection. Worse yet, in trials requiring placebo groups, some individuals would be deliberately withheld from receiving a known effective vaccine, an ethical red line for many researchers. Depriving people of proven protection during a trial, especially during a disease outbreak, is not just unethical, it's dangerous. Compounding the problem is the vagueness of the rule itself. The HHS has yet to clearly define what constitutes a new vaccine. Is a reformulation of an existing shot considered new? What about combinations of known antigens? The lack of clarity has left manufacturers in the dark, unable to plan trials or budget for new research. It has also seeded confusion among clinicians and regulatory experts who depend on precise guidance when evaluating clinical protocols. Uncertainty of this kind, in an industry that requires consistency and coordination, is not a minor nuisance. It's a recipe for paralysis. Financially, the consequences are staggering. Conducting full placebo-controlled trials can cost tens of millions of dollars per vaccine, even before considering the time and personnel required to execute them. These resources are finite. Forcing companies to spend them on testing updated versions of already proven vaccines may divert critical funding and manpower away from developing entirely new vaccines for diseases that currently have no treatment options at all. In essence, this rule may push companies to stop innovating, halt trials in progress, or simply abandon promising research because the bureaucratic hurdles have become insurmountable. Politically, the rule reflects a concerning departure from evidence-based health policy. Critics fear it is driven more by Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s long-standing skepticism toward vaccines than by sound scientific reasoning. His history of promoting vaccine misinformation casts a long shadow over this regulation. For someone leading the nation's health strategy, implementing a policy that echoes talking points of anti-vaccine movements, such as the claim that childhood vaccines were never tested against inert placebos, further undermines public trust and risks amplifying conspiratorial thinking about vaccine safety. There is also a profound risk to global health equity. The U.S. plays a pivotal role in vaccine development and distribution. If American regulatory standards become obstructively rigid, it could delay the global rollout of crucial vaccines or raise costs for lower-income countries that depend on U.S.-backed pharmaceutical research. Vaccines that could save lives abroad may never make it past the bureaucratic maze now imposed at home. Even supporters of increased vaccine scrutiny agree that this is not the way to do it. Researchers acknowledge that more transparency and data sharing in clinical trials could improve public confidence. But requiring universal placebo controls in every trial, regardless of the availability of prior data or existing effective alternatives, is a brute force approach that betrays the nuances of modern vaccine development. What makes this rule particularly troubling is the lack of input from scientific advisory bodies and key stakeholders. Public health policies of this magnitude should be built on broad consensus and deep consultation, not executive fiat. The rollout of this rule seems to have skipped that process entirely, undermining not only its legitimacy, but its practicality. In the end, Kennedy's policy may accomplish the opposite of its stated intent. Instead of reassuring the public about vaccine safety, it may sow more doubt and confusion. Instead of improving outcomes, it may block timely interventions. And instead of strengthening the medical research infrastructure, it may exhaust it, drowning scientists and clinicians in regulatory red tape while emboldening those who view vaccines with suspicion. The public deserves science-driven health policy that improves access, protects vulnerable populations, and advances innovation. This new rule, as it stands, threatens all three. Without significant revision or outright reversal, we may be witnessing the beginning of a dangerous setback in the fight against preventable disease.